Coming to you live from downtown Chicago. I am on the Magnificent Mile. I'm across from Symphony Hall and down the street from the Art Institute. So one of my favorite spots in Chicago, and thinking about the Olympics. So the Olympics are going on, and it's plenty of time for me to reflect on performance anxiety, what's happening to some of the athletes. But something pretty crazy is happening at the Olympics this year. They're putting heart monitors on parents of some of the athletes to show what the parents are going through. And they did this with Hezly Rivera's father, Henry, on Monday, if you caught Monday's Olympics. And you can catch it because it's being shown a lot now. He's probably going to become a meme, but his heart rate's kind of loud out here. Oh no. His heart rate was in the 160s. Okay, for a man, and he looks pretty healthy to me, probably works out, probably trains. His resting heart rate should probably be between 60 and 70, but he was in the 160 range, and at one point it spiked to over 180 beats per minute. So what does that mean, and what was actually happening to him? So he was definitely triggering the stress response because he wasn't moving. Like, even in his seat, he really wasn't moving very much, and yet he was definitely in this elevated heart rate. So the elevated heart rate tells us that he was triggering the stress response. And so let's reflect for a moment on what was happening to him, and then let's also think about the athlete. So for him, when he triggered the stress response, it would be very interesting to know, can he even recall, like move by move, anything from his daughter's performance? Chances are probably not so much, because when we're in fight or flight, we can't lodge memory very well. We can't store memory. And we can't recall things either. So we often miss out on some of the biggest events of our life because we're in fight or flight and we're not actually storing the memory very, very clearly, very correctly. Which is why some people say, like, I don't really remember much about that event, or I can't remember my wedding. My husband and I got married twice. I remember the second one a lot better than the first one. Twice in 2 weeks. We just went from Michigan to New Hampshire, so we could remember it, I guess. So that's something, memory. Another thing that was probably going down is his palms were probably really sweaty. He might have been, flushing in the face a little bit, or sweating in other parts of his body. Afterwards, he probably got really, really tired. So you get that adrenaline rush, right? But then there's going to be a lot of repairing that needs to be done after you do that initial flood of hormones. There's a second flood of hormones, and sometimes people hit the wall then. So like, you watch an event and then you're like exhausted afterwards. It's probably because you triggered too much adrenaline during the event. So I was thinking about him, but also thinking about athletes, and I have been coaching student athletes and musicians since I was 16. And so many times they tell me, I really can't stand how my parents behave in the stands or in the auditorium seats. Like, they don't like it when their parents get really nervous, either before, during, or after the event. They don't, and I remember clearly a time I went way out of bounds getting nervous at a hockey game. It was one of the first times my son was a goalie, my youngest son. So it's probably 2008 or so, 2009. Kid speeding toward him to score a goal, and I'm like freaking out in the stands because I'm like, it's going too fast at my kid. And my other sons grab me. They like grab my body and they're like, Mother, you better chill out or you're gonna have a heart attack before the season's over. But they weren't so wrong. Like, if I didn't get control of my emotions, first of all, your child out there, if you're a parent, your child out there, they feel your energy. You're so close to them. If they look up in the stands and they see like a look of consternation or this, like your forehead is tight, they look up and they see that, like, oh, Dad's worried about me or Mom's worried about me. That can trigger the stress response in them. So just how you behave can trigger the stress response. But I want to go before an event, the night before, the day of. Watch for things like, hurry up, we're going to be late. That can trigger the stress response. Talk about the event can sometimes trigger the stress response in the athlete because they're like nervous they're not going to do well, thinking they're not good enough. All those kinds of thoughts can go through their head, and if they feel pressure, it could trigger the stress response for them. So you want to watch that nighttime before and before you actually go to the event. At the event, oh, here comes a fire truck. If you can stay super cool, chill in the stands or in the auditorium, wherever you are, like just be exuding complete confidence in your child, they will feel that. They will feel that complete confidence. Your face will show it, your body will show it. If they happen to look up, a lot of my student athletes say I never even look at my parents because I just don't want to see their faces. I don't want to see that they're worried about me, right? If you cheer too hard, like that aggressive kind of cheer, if you go into the fight in fight or flight, that's a deal. That's a deal. And it's a slippery slope from, if you're overexcited, that triggers the stress response too. So it's like, you can be full of, yes, we're going to do this. But if it goes over the top, that can trigger fight or flight too. So how you are watching your child really matters. It really does. And I've worked with parents to get them so chill and thinking confidently about what their child is going to do. And their child feels that. They really do. I could talk for like an hour or 2 hours on this subject alone with what stress does to student athletes and how it causes them to underperform and later have some really serious problems with their health. And you see it over and over again. Suni Lee is a perfect example. Her body just crapped out on her basically. And so that doesn't need to happen. And she's also doing some eczema ad. That doesn't need to happen. So let's pressure free this world. I'm in Chicago right now and I'm wishing you a great pressure free day.